everybody. Welcome. Today is the 17th of June. Um, I got my good friend here, Fear No Goats. We are going to talk about knowing, what the concept of knowing is. Like, how do we get to the truth? What is the truth? And just kind of dive in and just have kind of more of a conversation with each other today. But first, please do make sure you do give me a follow at MNBFY Pod Goats. I struggle with that all the time, so it's at MNBFY Pod on X. Please like, sub, and subscribe to the channel. Comment if you can. Goats and me would love to hear what y'all have to say. Do make sure you do follow Goats at Fear No Goats on X. And let's get into it, Goats. So, when we think about knowing, you and me were having conversation offline. We joined a really cool space on Saturday. It was a space that I think you were co-hosting on. And shout out to Pines on that. That was pretty cool. And kind of got deep on some esoteric stuff, a little bit of religious stuff, and just life in general. And it got me pondering too on what do we actually know? And especially with all the world events going on, we're being told this is the truth, that is the truth, but what is truth? What is actually being cognizant of it? You want to take it from there? Maybe give me a little bit on that.
Sure. And first off, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate the invitation to your podcast here, and I like a good conversation. So thank you.
God bless,
knowing, like you said, especially in the time we're living in, where there's so much being thrown at us. I mean, there's a story that people are saying is world effect every day. World effect. The next big story. How do you know? How do you ever really know? And kind of a concept I had in my head, and I got it from listening to other people. John Vervaeke, somebody I listen to a lot on YouTube. He's a cognitive scientist, and I remember him saying something like this one time. It's like when you know something, you're taking all the details of a thing, and you're putting all those details that describe a thing in a box, and you're putting a label on that box, like gravity. So gravity has a label and has a box, and we put it in a safe place, right? So we don't have to wake up every morning and think about why gravity works, how gravity. We don't have to sit up in bed and steel man the concept of gravity before we put our feet on the ground, right? Because we know it's just gravity works the same every morning, every time we get out of bed. So there's all kinds of things that we do that with in life, and Ian McGilchrist is another good one that kind of fleshes this out, and it's our attention is we have so much attention, right? And you can attend to different things, but if you can put things in a box, you don't have to waste a lot of time on those things anymore, because you know what they are.
Right. You run on the assumption of knowing. You confuse knowing with assuming that you know.
Exactly.
And then you just run with that.
And things like gravity, generally that's a pretty good thing we can put in a box until we can't.
Yeah.
Right? But we can put that in a box and we can say, okay, we can wake up in the morning and we don't have to worry about gravity. But there's so many other things out there in our society, be it the global conflicts, be it the things we watch on the local news, the social stories. How do we really know what those things are, what the truth is? And the more I dig into that question, the more I think that real knowing is almost impossible. Being able to find every perspective on anything is almost impossible. So is there even a real knowing, or can we just sit here and philosophize back and forth and opine back and forth, right? But so many people out there talk like they know everything, and I think I think it'd be a good service for people to hear that maybe they don't know as much as they think.
I think we you go back to the old days, the beginnings of civilization before there was written text, right? Knowing was you had an elder, right? And the elder had this like, you know, this myth that they would pass on from generation to generation, right? And then over time, that myth, right, that creation myth or the myth of the people, the tribe, and I'm just saying, I'm using as an example, no specific tribes or anything like that. But over time, it gets a little, it changes, right? Maybe a word changes here, the way it's being, the tone of how it's being told changes, right? And then it gets to the point where it can be written. And so that knowledge, that knowledge that people that thought they knew, by the time it gets to when it's written, is it really what the truth was at the beginning?
And then who does the writing?
Exactly.
You
Who
know,
does the writing?
right?
Is it
Who
that
does
tribe that had the myth? Is it some
well,
scribe
the
from
one
another
that's still there,
civilization? Say that again.
the one that survived.
Yeah,
The ones that
exactly.
didn't survive never get to tell the story, right?
Exactly. His story, right?
Yeah, and it's so then when you get a little further, you know, the one who won the war, they say, you know, the winner tells the story. So you don't get the loser stories throughout history because they didn't survive. And I think that's an interesting thing to think about too, because that's a lot of story lost. I mean, a lot of story throughout the years, whether it's a religious story or a civilized story or whatever it is, the story gets lost, and we're in the time now that it's so like the printing press, right? The printing press enabled at the beginning the church to tell the story, and they were the only ones that told the story because they had the access to the print. And so you had only one story. So but you look at it today, now you've got millions of stories. Which do you, in your opinion, which do you think is, I don't know if I want to say easier or better or harder to navigate, easier to navigate, only having one story and trying to find the truth, or having a million stories and trying to find the truth?
Well, that's a question to me. I mean, I obviously the easy path is always the path most people are going to take. Not always, but most people always will take the easy path. And so I would say, in your question, you'd go with the one book, right? And we hear that all the time, don't we? It's the one book. It's the truth. This is the truth. And I'm not trying to make it a religious thing, right? Like it's like you're in K through 12 in America, right? Someone decided to put 15 chapters together for social studies, right? Who's deciding that this is the knowledge that we want young Americans to know as foundational in of history, right? Like we're gonna do one paragraph about the Trail of Tears. We're gonna do 15 pages about the Revolutionary War. We're gonna do a tiny little excerpt about World War One and just talk about how World War One was started because of the Black Hand killing Archduke Ferdinand, right? But then people don't decide. It's like what I'm trying to say is like I've noticed in my life, people's ability to have discernment has like come into blinders, right? So what they are given to read, they assume is a true source of knowledge. And this is their knowing, right? Like you decide you do not like the history of World War II. There was a space I was on the other day, and everyone was kind of fighting about, you know, um, the various Western allies like Australia and all these allies that came together. But like people failed to understand that like there was an entire other front to that war, but it was not pertinent to recognize Russia's role as an ally, love or hate them. This is just, what I understand is history. Going back to what we're talking about, like what I've read from multiple sources, right? But like no one talks about how Russia came around from out from like the east and came down and took those islands, which now they have sub base on. They've occupied 4 Japanese islands, and they were on their way to reach the main island, and we just happened to drop unfortunately, I think unfortunately dropped two nuclear weapons on Japan, right? But in an American textbook, do you learn that, Goats? Did you see anything about the Russian front on Japan?
Well, and see, thankfully, now we can go back and find out who wrote those books, or at least who funded the writing of our curriculums in early school in America. The Rockefellers had a big to do with that. A lot of the industrial owners of companies back then who needed people to do a specific task getting out of school. They needed them to learn a specific thing, come in on time, sit down, listen to the teacher, listen to the rules. The bell tells you when you can go to lunch. The bell tells you when you can go to the bathroom. The bell tells you when you can clock out and go home. The making of the good little production boys and girls, right? And that's kind of an interesting little rabbit hole too, to see how we are educated and why some of the people that did that educated us. And then, yeah, those individual stories about who started what, where did it start? I was reading, I think we were talking about it last night, but about some of the fundings during World War One and World War Two, and tracing that money trail around, and how, the Germans really got funded by the bank that was supposed to be repaying the other countries in Europe from after World War One. The Bank of International Settlements. They were actually rerouting all that money in World War Two right back to Germany, and it's and whatever, and that has nothing to do with declaring a winner or a loser, or who was in the right, who was in the wrong. That's just a thing that happened. And it's very interesting. I've done, I didn't come into even this desire of knowledge. We were talking about this a little bit last night too. This desire of knowledge until, probably about 13, 14 years ago. I lived most of my life as a party guy, drugs, drinking, all that good stuff. And or good stuff when you're young. But
Yeah,
and so
at the time.
I didn't care. I remember 9/11. I remember those big. It's not like I was in a complete fog and ideas about it, but when I finally put that life down, my mind opened up to curiosities that I never had before. Curiosities of just digging into stuff, and I've watched a lot of podcasts, read a lot of books, and again, but still, I don't claim to know much. And some people will say that's a that's not a good stance to take, because, well, you just don't stand on anything, right? Well, it's not that. I have some pretty strong beliefs. I have some pretty strong opinions, but I've come to a place that I'm not married so much to them, or I try really hard not to be, right? Married so much to them that if I'm wrong, that it's going to completely crash my world, right? Because I think so many of us are so entrenched in our ideas, and this landscape we live in forces that, right? Every story that comes out, you must have an opinion. And you can't just have an opinion. You better, viciously defend that opinion, because somebody's going to viciously try and tell you it's wrong. So you've got to have these strong beliefs. And I try and stay as far away from those cognitive dissonance type beliefs, right? That are going to shatter my world if they're wrong, because I don't know.
No, I mean, for me, in my life journey, and it's been kind of recent, is I've kind of admitted to myself, I grew up, I got high, I got a master's degree, and got a, I went high, graduate school, and then you kind of get this like hubris, right? You're like, I'm highly educated. I know things. I've wrote like 55-page papers. I know fucking everything. And then the humbling moment to me was just like when I realized I don't know anything, because especially like in the past year, right? Like I had this belief system, okay? And I was very passionate about this belief system. And then I swore it was true because I knew, quote unquote, that the other fabricated belief system, the left versus right kind of thing, right? I've always been fairly right wing, you know. I've just kind of realized it's all BS because I'm seeing the same behavior from the right that I've seen for decades from the left all of a sudden, you know? And then when that happened for me, I was shocked. And then I
Where,
realized people don't
can you
actually
put a
know
marker on
anything.
that?
We're
Can,
just regurgitating talking points, right? That we believe in. And like you're saying, like that we believe in are true, and then we assume we know it's true. And so because you're under the assumption of knowledge, you cannot, or some people are incapable of admitting, they're wrong, or they're incapable of saying, you know what, let me look into that. You know what, that sounds like something that could be possible. I don't know if I fully, trust that. Let me verify that for myself. We've lost that, like as a society. In particular, I'm talking about American society, right? Maybe even global society, because the internet has just blown everything up, you know. Um, and it's troubling that I've noticed a lot of people are still stuck in that paradigm of like assumption of knowledge without the grace of admitting, maybe I should look into something, like you were saying, like I should look into something a little more. I mean, what is the source? What is this source? Like, who wrote this? Where does it come from? Who funded it? Was there an agenda behind the people that funded the writing of this particular, literature or textbook, right? It's curious, right?
well, and I've found that's the exact, when I do my research, and the bottom thing or the main thing I always keep in mind is follow the money. I mean, I think that's a pretty. I think we've seen that that's a pretty good foundation to search from. Follow the way the money flows, and you'll get a lot of stories, pretty decently, But one thing you were talking about, the right left, and how you see the right playing a lot of the games that the left was always famous for playing, and I've seen the same thing. When did you really see that? When did, like censorship, deplatforming, doxing, things like that? When can you put a marker on that for yourself?
Yeah, I actually I could tell you pretty much the day.
Yeah.
It was like, um, it was really the moment where like my eyes opened up wide. I'm like, holy crap! I woke up out of the stupor. Was June 12th of 25. I was my whole life like a Republican, and I bled red. Like we all bleed red, but you know what I mean.
Right,
Um,
right.
but it was just when for example, I came out and said, "F this war." Like I did not vote for this shit. I don't like when like, I'm not trying to make it political, and I don't know if you mind, but
Not at all.
like for me, it was like when I voted. I'm gonna say when I voted for Trump in 16. I didn't vote in 20 because I was in the middle of a move and I didn't want to do a mail-in ballot because I vehemently opposed them. And I voted in 24 for him, right? But in 24, it felt so existential, goats. I was like, man, the all these illegals flooding in. We're just coming out of COVID. And then I'm also just like worried about the economy. Like I wanted to like, you know, do better for myself, for my wife, for like my house, and make more money and have more opportunity, have the ability to grow. Like those are the things I was focused on. Let's get rid of illegals. Let's grow the domestic economy. Yeah, let's stay away from war. Let's embrace crypto. I thought that was going to happen. Then, like I said, the 12th of June hit, and then I spoke out against it like in my personal life, and online. And I was just like, the responses I got like when I was called a panikin for the first time, I'm like, first off, I don't know what the fuck that means. When I first heard, I'm like, panicking, what the hell is that? And I'm like, I'm not panicking. I'm literally telling you, we did not vote for this. And then those same people that I used to listen to, I'm not going to drop the names of these podcasters, but like they're big podcasters that I used to listen to. And they're pushing that rhetoric all of a sudden, right? And then I'm like, what is going on? Then I started going back and like, looking back on the tape, right? And then I noticed like going back, into election year, like June, July of the election year on these particular podcasts. And then I noticed after like I kind of woke up, goats, the rhetoric was already happening like a year before. I just was blinded to it because I was like gung ho, like we have to get this man elected because the country's screwed if we don't. And I think in some ways that's still true. I mean, I feel like
100%.
I feel like if we got Kamala, the threesome menage a trois, Montel Williams Harris into office, we would be in a much murky. I believe the Iran war would have still happened, and it'd been 10 times worse than it's gone, and it's bad right now. This is total, just bombed this. No pun intended. Like we screwed this whole thing up. Now we're in a position where we have to possibly give freaking Islamic Republic billions of dollars, and the strait was already open and we never had to give them money. They were about to fall over from the sanctions. And we can get into if you want to, we can get into that tiny little engine that could Thomas the Train Country, but that's kind of it, goats. Like that was it when I started the name calling. Then I started seeing the canceling. It's like, oh, this person's a grifter, when it's actually the people calling people grifters are the grifters. And it's like this reverse psychology and mass like psychosis of people where they, in my opinion, they see that things are deceptive, but are incapable of openly admitting it to themselves first and to others because of fear of being judged. Right. And yeah, I know I kind of went on a tangent there. I'm sorry for that. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Absolutely, because I can name my exact day as well. And it's not that I didn't at this point already know that Republicans and Democrats were pretty much, the same wing of, or the two wings of the same bird, or however you say that. But there were things that the left had been doing, right, since at least since Trump, probably, but it really ramped up since Trump, that I just never thought that the Republicans would do. And some of those things I mentioned a second ago, censorship, deplatforming, doxing, shit like that. And the day that changed for me was October 8th. October 8th, I saw the right start calling for censorship, calling for hate speech laws, calling for the stuff that I had detested the left for doing for years. And that just, it blew me away. It blew me away. And then, like what you're talking about, the projectionism, right? And that was another trait of the left. The left they could accuse you of something, you can damn near bet that they're doing it, right? That projectionism, and then I started to see that on the right too, exactly like what you're talking about with the grifter call outs and stuff. And it was like, man, that's not supposed to be us, guys. That's not supposed to be us. We speak more, not less. Speech is a responsibility to me, right? It's not a right. Okay. Now this is something I've got some pushback on before. But I thoroughly believe that if the country was to function the way that our founders intended for it to function, but they couldn't put mandate type words in, right? Because you can't mandate it, but it's a responsibility. If you have something to say, you have a responsibility to say it. I believe. The Second Amendment, I think it's the same way. If you're an able-bodied American, you have a responsibility to carry a firearm to protect yourself, the people around you, your community, your family. So then we don't have to live in a police state. Because if we could take care of ourselves, we wouldn't need all the police. We wouldn't need all the government. The only reason we have all these things is because we have proven as a people that we can't take care of ourselves. That there's very few people that I believe that have a deep souled yearning for freedom. Because I don't think freedom is the default position in humanity. I think
it has to be earned every time.
Well, exactly, because what tells you that it's not default is that it's difficult, is that it requires work, that it requires sacrifice. Those things aren't inherent. You have to do something. You have to put some action into them to get them. Now, being taken care of, you don't have to do anything for that, right? So that's easy. That's why the left. That's why the left sounds good to. And I'm going to say it just.
Speak your mind.
It sounds good to people that don't have conviction. I think a weaker mind. I hate to say that.
No, it's true.
It just
true.
It's appealing to a people that don't want the responsibility of freedom, because that responsibility
requires work.
Wait, it takes work. It takes sacrifice,
perseverance.
Yes,
all no one wants that anymore. We live in a infantile, over generations. I argue from the boomers, it's like at least from the boomer babies is when they initiated this effort. And I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, you're fine.
But it started from there, and then now you come into like my generation, millennial. I think the millennial generation, my generation, is the first captured generation. There are a decent minority percentage of millennials that persevere. They speak their mind. They're not complacent. They object to it vehemently, the idea of complacency, but the capture has already been, it's done. Now it's interesting because I don't know if you agree with this, but through the election, we kind of saw that with Gen Z, specifically like white Americans in Gen Z started pushing back against the complacency paradigm that they've entrapped people into via social engineering. None of this crap is accidental. Right. This has all been composed to perfection, because you cannot take down America. We're a massive country. You're not going to invade here and have much luck. The U.S. couldn't even fully take Afghanistan. Now imagine you come and invade America, where we got 100+ million gun owners, an average of 3 to 4 guns per household.
I mean, what was that Japanese general back in the day that you can't
Yamamoto? I don't want to. I'm not going to say the name
because there's a gun behind every blade of grass.
Yeah, exactly. I don't remember his name either. I almost said Yamamoto. Scratch that from the record. I don't know, but I know the expression. Yeah. But that was a legitimate fear. And so how do you take America? Like you are you familiar with Yuri Bezmenov? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's executed. He even said it then in that 60 minutes. He's like, this plan is already in motion, guys. Like it's already happening. You guys are already co-opted.
Yep.
And then you look at it today, right? And
I started noticing it as a kid myself. Thankfully I was brought up by a dad who had, and I'm barely, I've talked about this a few times. If my parents were any less hard on me, disciplined on me, I might be one of these blue hair freaking, because it's been hard work for me to hold that mentality. My dad was a hard ass. My mom would have let me, she would have probably coddled me quite a bit more. But thankfully my stepdad was more of a boot in the ass kind of guy. And I didn't take it then, but I took it, as I've grown up. It was always back there. And so I realized what hard work does. And I'm even, I don't know, it's weird. I think I do stuff in my life just to have difficulty. Um, because I think in the back of my head somewhere, I think that, life is too easy, and um, I I think I thrive more in difficulty. I think I think comfort is an evil word, in my opinion. I think it's a lot of the reason why we are where we are as a country is comfort and convenience. Because every bit of convenience that you get is a little slice of freedom that you've lost. It doesn't matter if it's a dishwasher. A dishwasher is a convenience, but you've lost. How many people you hear their kids can't do dishes. They gotta do them 4 or 5. Well, they can't do dishes because you never made them because you got a damn dishwasher. You know what I mean?
Dude.
Or so every slice, it's interesting.
Like for me, like I grew up, my dad, once I turned 10 years old, and so it was, everyone was hyped to go out. It's summer and we're gonna go play video games or just do nothing, right? Dude, my dad would make me wake up every morning with him at 5:30 a.m. That's why I still wake up at 5 a.m. every day. I mean, he instilled this in me. But I wake up at 5:30 a.m. He'd make me go take a shower, and then he'd take me. He had a mechanic shop and a little car dealership, right? So he would take me to the mechanic shop, and then the customers' cars would roll in. He'd do the work, and he'd say, "Hey, go grab the hose, the bucket, the soap, and those sponges. Go wash their car." And he would make me wash cars all the way till I got a driver's license, dude. Every summer, I had to live at this damn car shop. He did not want me to like waste my time. You know what I mean? But like that's and I resented him for it until I was, probably until I was like 15. I resented it. Then at that time I was like, it was life, and in a way conditioned into accepting hard work as part of life, right? To your point, I was not provided. Obviously, I had the comforts of my home, and I lived a very comfortable. I was very blessed, but I wasn't provided. I was not allowed the comfort of convenience or leisure. Right? It's like you have idle time. You're going to use it productively, right?
Don't go to your mom and dad and say you're bored, right?
What's that?
Don't go to your mom and dad and say you're bored.
No. I didn't even get a chance. He would know. He's like, if he saw me sitting around for 30 minutes, he's like, what do you got planned today? Oh yeah, I gotta do some homework. He said, no, you don't. You're gonna come with me. We're gonna go do this. We're gonna go hang out with my friend, and you're gonna help him clean the kitchen of the restaurant. And like, he did not let me. I had to work, all the time, and I'm very grateful for that, because then I see people like in my professional life, right? Like my work life, you're 9 to 5. I got folks. I have folks that are 25 to 28 years old, goats, and man, if you tell them, "Hey, I need you to run through this code and just make sure that the API is there for this, the API is there for this new software," right? Like, and if not, let me know so I can contact the vendor. I'm just giving you like a bad example. Dude, they piss and moan. They piss and moan for me to give them, like, I asked them to do 45 minutes of work. It's like 45 minutes of work. Like, and then they think they deserve 6-figure jobs right out of college. It's like I started off ditch digging and then became a customer claims guy in a telecom construction company to operating a boring drill, going through grad school, doing all that. And then, life, went on. But like, I had to do the work to get to somewhere, and people just assume it's going to be easy. And as we see, the country is not easy anymore. It's harder.
And you don't want it to be. You shouldn't. I believe that the desire of comfort should be examined thoroughly. I don't. You know what I mean? I mean, a comfortable life seems cool. It sounds good. But I don't think as humans we do well in comfort. I don't. I don't, at least. I have figured this out in my life. I wondered for years why my life was so hard. Why and I'm just why am I going through addiction? Why did my car break down? Why did man I helped shovel this old lady out of a ditch last night, and I get fired from my job the next day. Why does this why does this happen? But then I realized at a point, an artist I like a whole lot, and you may have heard me talking about some of Smitty's spaces, but Ren, this dude is so amazing, and something he said in one of his songs, shit, I'm getting off on a point now. I forgot where the hell I was going with that. Shit.
It's okay.
We're talking about comfort. I can't remember what the hell he said, but anyway, it's just I've gotten to the point where I've realized, the dance. That's what it was. The dance. Okay, you're dancing. I feel clumsy. I feel like my feet just don't work, and I'm struggling to make this dance work, right? And then I realized at some point that if I just relax a little bit and realize that, hey, maybe this is just how I do it. This is just how I do it. It gets a little easier. Have I still wrenched on cars on the side of the road at 2:00 in the morning in the last year and a half? You bet your ass I have. But I've come to be okay with it. I've come to be okay because not only is it just what it is, there's an accomplishment after that. When I fix that thing, there's an accomplishment. When I fix, my lawnmower that's 20 years old, that, generally it pulls on the first start every summer, and it just because it's just an old, it's old push mower. It's just an old 3.5 horse push mower, but I keep it running, so I don't have to buy another one. And those are the things that I try to do to not be under this system that we live under, right? We've given up so much control and responsibility. We throw things away, we go buy another one. We outsource our knowledge to the news. We outsource raising our kids to the daycare. We outsource all this stuff to all these other entities that not only don't care about us, but as we look through the stretch of time, probably want us dead. or at least in chains under their control, right? The food we eat. So I've tried to take as many of these responsibilities back into my life as I can. Homeschooled my daughter. I didn't most of the time. Her mom did, but just that was a decision to not send her to school is what I mean. Taking care of my health. Trying to get out there and have at least an educated guess on some things I can talk about. And going back to knowing a little bit at the beginning, I think there's a lot to be known philosophically. I think philosophical conversations, you can really pin some things down as far as how people work, how they think, things like that. And I like those conversations. But then also, let me pivot to another thing. We only are able to think about those things because we've got time. Right?
Exactly. I get that 100%.
Yes, but we also know that time is not, we could be working and not. I make this analogy a lot. Now listen to this. I love chopping wood, man. I love chopping wood, getting out there with the axe and splitting wood. And it doesn't matter if it's the middle of the winter. If you're splitting wood, you're sweating, right? And you know what I've never thought while I'm sweating and splitting wood? Am I a woman? You know what I mean? Because I don't have time. I piss standing up, and that's what makes me know I'm a man when I'm out chopping wood, right? I don't sit down to piss. I piss standing up. I'm a man. I don't have time. That's one of those things that I put in the box and put the label on and put in the safe space. I'm a man.
I feel that
I don't need
100%.
to steel man that every time I wake up and get out of bed. I don't need to examine the details of why I'm a man every day when I wake up. I know. I go to the bathroom and I pee standing up. That's good enough for me. You know what I
Feel
mean?
that
So
100%.
there's a
And
double-edged sword of that time. I love talking about the philosophical stuff, but I also realize that getting too deep into that stuff gets us where we're at today, I think.
that's
You understand
fair.
what I'm saying? Does that make any sense?
It does. And like on the concept of time, like what I've learned, like I've learned to discern is movies, TV, video games. I love video games, I'm not gonna lie. All the entertainment, sports, all this stuff, what does it do? It takes time away from you. And then you get conditioned into using your a limited amount of time to do these things that provide you no value, right? Yeah, sure, they give you it's a hobby. You can relax a little bit, but look at America, man. Like all people talk about is sports, and that's fine. But like no one reads books anymore. Like I think I was talking with you once, and maybe it was another friend of ours. We're talking about Nietzsche, and we're talking. I brought up like Descartes, and like the discourses of Descartes, and like the concept of like the physical reality is just a projection of the mind. That there is no real physical reality. Like the reality you create is from your mind, right? And everyone's reality is different. And then, Nietzsche, the just breaking down when he says God is dead. No one's having these conversations anymore because all of our time is being put into like the knowledge of like World of Warcraft or like the stats of a football team or
Or who blocked me today?
what's that? Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Or who blocked me today?
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
I was at breakfast yesterday morning, and this younger couple was sitting across from me, and this girl was talking to her boyfriend. Probably it was they were that young. And, she went on a rant about somebody that blocked her the day before, and I'm just like I'm shaking my head, like man, if that was I don't know,
Dude,
but
that's what
talking
they've
about
done with the concept of knowing is like to have knowledge to know things is they've just shifted the Overton, like the window on that, right? I won't call it the Overton window, but like the window of discernment has moved. Like knowing is like is culture, right? That's knowing now. It's not knowing isn't like touching grass and staring at the sky and being in wonderment and seeing the beauty of nature or going for a hike or looking at like for you, I pray one day I'll be a father and like looking at my child and like, wow, like I'm now part of the cycle of life. Or looking at your dog, you love your dogs, then the way they look at you with unconditional love and like processing that and like knowing what love is and like seeing the evil in the world and vehemently opposing it and fighting against it and hoping and praying that people will wake up to this. They can't because their concept of knowing is statistics and sports. Uh, is American Idol even a thing anymore? I don't know. I don't watch TV, but like this is the stuff that people think is the knowledge they need to carry. And then they engage in discourse about politics and about, oh, you're just a dumb redneck. Really? That person's a redneck? He works his ass off. Like, and they shitting on blue collar. You know, I worked blue collar. I've been in that life. Like when I first got married, I lived in a really shitty apartment with my wife that I was scared every day I go to work that something could happen to her, for the first couple years of our marriage. Like I know what it's like to have to work your ass off for little, and many Americans do. And so like what have they done is that's also the problem with the left is like it's a lot of these fucking, excuse my language, it just pisses me off. It's like a bunch of like third, fourth generation rich kids that have never known anything, that have no purpose in life, that know nothing because they've had everything given to them, that they need to attach themselves to some sort of like movement that's to better people or like some sort of like boohoo movement. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true in my opinion. They attach themselves to like BLM or like Me Too, you know, and then they advocate against everyone, and they don't even know what they're advocating.
And here's an opinion on that whole thing about social causes, right? It's not that I don't believe there are social causes worth
Me neither. Me neither. I want to be clear. It's just
that
I'm giving
that
an
there are
example.
minorities that have had a rougher time, that it's my problem is how they help, because I don't think what they do is help. I don't
Exactly.
think I don't think giving a group of people just enough money to obtain the least amount of comfort for the least amount of output, right? So let's take welfare just as an example. Now, you could be a big argument made that welfare was started for a certain minority class, right? To I believe keep them um, in the position where they need government, where they will be conditioned generation over generation to look to the government for the handout, for that least output, for least amount of, okay, I can get food just to barely feed, but I ain't got to do nothing. So that feels good, right? And then generation over generation, now I would argue now it's not a single group of people idea anymore. It is spread to just a class.
It's
It's
a
not. It's
class.
not a. It's not a group. It's a class now.
Yeah.
A class of people have of all different backgrounds, race, religion, have been caught in this low income government assisted trap, because that's what it is. It's a trap, because if you give people, nobody appreciates being given anything. You don't appreciate being given a car, whatever. You don't take Most people don't take care of it as well. If you had to work your ass off, blood, sweat, and tears, 50 hours, 60 hours a week to get that car or to pay that rent or to do that, you appreciate stuff a little more, and that sense of entitlement gets shredded real quick when you have to work for it. And back to something we were talking about a minute ago about the kind of the founders and the way the country, I believe the country uh, was intended, was that you have to have a responsibility to everybody. It starts to sound. I've had this conversation with a couple other people, and it starts to sound a little, when you talk about sacrifice, right? When you talk about the greater good, those are kind of socialist buzzwords, right? Would you agree with that? The
Yeah.
greater good, those kind of things.
Yeah.
But really, when you talk about freedom, freedom, in my opinion, is not the right to do whatever you want. Freedom is the responsibility to do what is right. And then you would ask, well, what is right? Right to me is the thing that profits society, or whatever group the thing that profits society in a extended stretch of time, right? So it can't be what's good for society tomorrow. It can't be what's good for society next month or next year. It has to be in a long stretch of time. So, cutting the penises off of your children may be good for society in the next week to make everybody feel good, right? But it's
Yeah.
obviously not good in the long stretch of time, because pretty soon you're not going to have people left if you cut the penises off all of your boys.
Oh, dude, it's totally part of the depopulation agenda.
Right, right.
I'm sorry to
But
say that. I
people
mean,
don't
like maybe I'm making a
understand
leap
that.
here and I'm putting my tinfoil hat on, but that's my opinion. I mean, like you are literally grooming and train and convincing people that feel downtrodden, that in their younger years where people are experimenting, they're trying to find themselves. I can't tell you how many girls, dude, in high school how many girls even like in the end of middle school will start like hooking up with each other, and then like by senior year they're out partying looking for the stud of the group, you know? They're just like, but then they're being captured now into believing you actually feel this way. Like this you should know this is how you really feel and you should pursue this. And then how many stories are we seeing about people that have gone through these operations that are 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, and they have nothing but regrets on what they've done to their bodies.
Not only that, not only the experimenting with the girls, because that was kind of there's a long phase there where that was socially acceptable. You know, that was just you get to a party and there's gonna be some girls making out somewhere, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna get drunk and they're gonna start making out and everybody's gonna be cheering, you know, going at it. But what the thing that has happened now that they convinced them that no, they aren't a lesbian. If they like a girl, they obviously must be a boy because that's how things work, right?
Exactly.
That men must like women. So if you like women, you must be a man, not a gay woman. So that's a interesting little rabbit hole kind of to go down too, because I've talked to some gay people and it's kind of like they're almost being eradicated in some respects, which thinking about it that way is an interesting little flip too.
Yeah, we could probably talk about that on like another pod because I can go into the Fauci, HIV.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, man.
yeah, dude. I grew up less than an hour and a half away from Ryan White when I was a kid. So I was 10 years old when I was the same, pretty much same age as him. And I remember that, dude. I remember being scared to drink out of drinking fountains, be scared to sit on toilet seats because back then that's how we thought. Oh shit, we could get AIDS from drinking out of a drinking fountain.
Dude, they did that to us in middle school. I think it was there was that movie, the HBO, the band keeps marching on. You remember what I'm talking about? The band that
Um,
and it was anyway, there's like this movie. Anyway, there's this movie like based on a true story thing of them trying like these doctors and scientists trying to find the vaccine and like to like stop AIDS and like they show it as like this like end of society type of thing. It's a conditioning, man. Like, and it's just the going back to like the theme that we had is like people need to like have enough awareness and discernment to like know what is real and what is wrong. Like we all have the capability to still do that. It's just you hit another theme that's true, and I think that they're intrinsically linked to each other now, unfortunately, and it's that complacency factor, that like that laziness, that I'm just gonna go with the flow mentality, versus like being hyper vigilant about things, being stand up, being focused, being aware. As exhausting, and it's exhausting, dude. It's exhausting to like constantly question everything and research everything and never trust what you hear the first time. Check 5 or 6 sources, and then ultimately maybe you check 6 sources, you still don't think you know the truth. No one wants to do that anymore because it's in their minds they perceive it as too difficult, too time consuming, and there's no gain out of it because it's all like, what is it? What is that phrase? Like they want like short term, easy gratification, like minimum input gratification loop, right? Like that's what most people are operating under now.
well, and here's another thing that I really try and for anybody who may ever listen to me, one of the things that I really try and hammer these days is emotional maturity, because that's what you're talking about right there, of the hard work of research. Acting on your emotions is way easier because emotions they pop right up, right? They pop right up, and if you're not a mature person, you get taken by your emotions. And when someone or a system sees that you can be controlled by your emotions, that's the easiest thing in the world. There are people, I don't know if I'm sure you know some people. I don't operate like this, but I know there are people that every single thing that they do throughout a day, every interaction with another human they make, they're making calculations in their mind on how they can get something, how they can win this interaction, how they can, get something from this person in this interaction. And that's what that's all about is emotional manipulation, right? And so I my emotional, I call it unfuckwithable. That's my goal in life, is to be unfuckwithable. And I think that has been forged in me through a lifetime of in school getting picked on, getting just eviscerated in school. I was a little kid. My freshman year of high school, when get my physical for football, the doctor told me told my parents if I was his kid, he wouldn't let me play football. I was like 5'1", a $110 or something, and I had ears that were 4 times the size of my body. I had these giant ears, and dude, teased mercilessly. And you would think after going through things like that a person might say, man, that bullying, I want to get rid of that. I want to, let's make rules and no bullying, but no, because I realized at a point what that made me, and it made me unfuckwithable. There's you couldn't say anything to me to to really get at me. And I take pride in that because, and it's not that I just stuff it down and don't deal with it, right? Because I've learned that through sobriety. 14 years of not drinking now. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a whole lot about myself, and I learned those emotional triggers, and I learned those things that I used to stuff down and watch them explode at some point, right? Because that's what they do when we just stuff them down. When they talk about toxic masculinity, it's a phrase that a lot of people hate, but I do understand where it comes from, because men generally have not been allowed the freedom to, in a good way, deal with their emotions, right? So we're taught to stuff them down. And then you explode, however that comes out. If it's abusing your wife, or if it's, becoming an alcoholic, or whatever it is, those are the things that generally as men that we had trouble dealing with those emotions, and it came out in bad ways. And I think the next evolution of men that, again, for the half a person out there that might hear what I got to say, but that this next evolution of men is a man that is a man's man, right? Can do the things, can make people around them feel comfortable and safe and protected and whatnot, but also that can deal with those emotions without stuffing them down, without letting them explode out, that can process them, let them flow through their mind. Not, that's something I learned in meditation is you can't stop the thoughts from coming, but what you can do is not grab a hold of them. Just let them go. Just let them go through whichever, right to left, left to right, whichever you feel. I think I've talked to people that feel that differently. I don't know if you feel how thoughts, like, directionally. I don't know. I've meditated a lot, and it's kind of interesting. But anyway, but to not grab a hold of them, just let them go. Whether it's a good thought, a bad thought, because when you grab a hold of it, you're no longer living now. When you grab a hold of a thought, you're no longer living now, because it's a thought of the past, a thought of the future. One of the big things we talked about in AA was future fucking. Don't future fuck yourself, which is, dwelling on what could happen, and then you're all nervous and you're anxious and all that stuff, where you ain't there yet. So quit future fucking yourself.
Feel that. That's knowledge right there too, man. I mean,
I
I've had
mean,
I don't know, with me, my mind kind of operates from like from back to front. Like my thoughts come right to my mind's eye.
that's
And like
funny.
yeah, it's that's how it is. It's weird. And then like it like I can like it's like the words are there and it's hard for me sometimes. I'm not perfect. I get angry. And when I do exactly what you said. I grab onto it and then I it just cycles in my mind in over and over and over again until like a reaction comes out. I've gotten a lot better at that. But it does happen sometimes. I'm just answering
It
your
takes
question
work,
from
man.
direction.
It takes work. It takes
Oh
intention.
yeah. My wife keeps trying to make me do yoga. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna do no downward
Dude, I tell
facing
you what,
dog.
I used to do a shit ton of yoga, meditation, yoga. Um,
Maybe I
I used to,
should.
yeah.
Should be
Um,
open to it.
yeah. Did you hear? Here's another thing of the emotional, manipulation and whatnot that I like to bring up. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Right? I'm sure I heard that as a kid. I'm sure you probably heard it. I think I don't know how many years we've probably been hearing that, but when did you realize that was a lie?
When did I realize that that's a lie?
Yeah.
Probably my first breakup.
Okay.
You know,
So
'cause- yeah.
here's it's a lie, but it's a valuable lie. And here's why I think that. So when you're a kid, sticks and stones, maybe you're getting picked on. Kids at school are calling you names. Your mom's a dirty. Your sister stinks. Blah blah blah. Your hair sucks. Your ears are big. All this stuff. They're throwing stuff at you. As kids, we don't have the emotional intelligence yet, the emotional maturity to properly be able to process that these are just some kids that feel just as bad about themselves as you do about yourself, just as confused about themselves as you feel about yourself. We don't have the maturity to understand that yet. So that saying is attempting to build an armor around us to protect us from those words that we realize actually do hurt once we get older. And then hopefully, once we get older, we've developed the emotional maturity to be able to actually not let them hurt us. Realize that, yes, words do have power and yes, they can hurt, but I'm mature now and I cannot let them hurt me. So it's
Yeah, like
armor when you're young and the maturity to understand it when you're older. What do you think about that?
no, I agree with that. My personal experience, and that's the unique thing about each of us, right? Human beings is I resonate with that by the way. For me, it was more of I've over the course of my life, I've become just more I've been steeled by the damage of what words can do to someone's feelings, their mind, etc. Right? It's been like a repetitive practice for me of like dealing with like heartbreak and getting I don't want to say like cold hearted, but like getting stronger. You know, like being forged, if you will. I think everyone kind of navigates like because your life experience as you explained it was different than my own. Like when I kind of grew up hanging out with like the quote unquote cool kids in school, but I also was best friends with the nerds, best friends with them. I'd spend more time with them, right? Because I enjoyed their company, I enjoyed their kindness, and they're just real people. And when they would get messed with, I'd throw hands. I'm straight up saying it. I would never let anyone like in high school. It got to a point where I had like a group of friends that were all like we tried to be good people. I'm not saying I was a good person. I would never claim that. I'm still trying to be a good person. But in those years, my dad always taught me, you take care of the weaker people. You have to. You have an obligation to do that, right? Like when people are being picked on and stuff, right, goats. And so um seeing that from the outside steeled me because I had tremendous empathy for the plight of some people. And so that made me emotionally stronger in the sense where I knew that if I see this person that's vulnerable, and if I beat like I'm mean to them, all I'm doing is hurting them more, and I'm making myself feel like weaker and darker and like a lower frequency, you know? And then going through my own life experiences, like I said, like a breakup, that was disgusting, and like learning instead of like seething on it, I can't let that happen to me again. Lesson learned. Next chick, that's not going to happen. If I see signs of this or that, then that's exit doors, right? And for me, my life experience of like learning my emotion, like gaining emotional control, which I'm not perfect at, um, has been more in that vein. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's something that, again, I try and preach um, a lot because, we're on the same team. And I'm not just specifically you, but you, I'm talking to you now. So, but anybody else out there that I like, or I frequent their conversation, be it Twitter or real life or whatever, we're on the same team, right? And so if we're on a team, I grew up playing team sports, and if somebody on the team, right, is underperforming, or they could do better, or what, you got to tell them, right? If they don't see it, you got to tell them. You
Yeah,
got, because and really that is love. Love
it
isn't
is.
always rainbows and unicorns, man. You know what I mean?
Love comes from a place.
And so I feel, especially on this emotional subject, because I feel that I've been through fires in my life that have forged me into this, at least the attempt of this unfuckwithable thing that I talk about. So, when I see somebody that lets a word or an idea or something get them emotionally riled up, I want to say, hey, hey, you're letting, you're letting someone control you. Because that's what's happening, right? You're allowing someone to control you by putting an idea, a word, or something into your head. And I also realize the way I do this sometimes may not be the best, the best. So I'm working on that. But I do believe in the principle of trying to help people around me be emotionally mature, because I want you to do the same thing to me.
Yeah,
That's
I respect
really it.
that.
I want you to check me also, because I know I need checking. So I feel if I think I need it, then then maybe somebody else thinks that I should be you know somebody around them should provide that back. You know what I'm saying? If I feel I need it and I want people around me to tell me when I'm being an asshole, then I figure that there's somebody around me that thinks that same thing. So if that's me, sometimes I'll say, if I got to be the asshole, then hey, I'll be the asshole, whatever.
No, I agree. I mean,
We,
emotional
we,
control is the greatest form of is one of the greatest forms of knowledge you can have, because it keeps you out of the shit, like, you know, good old bar days, drinking too much, and knowing not to, if you bump into the guy that's 6'4" and you're 5'7", like myself, I'm not a tall guy. I learned quickly, don't think you're tough enough to fight that guy. How about have you, even you can have humility, no matter what, and it's probably the most important form of knowledge, in my opinion, that people can have, especially today, is emotional control. As you're saying it, you become unfuckwithable. That way, you can't be mentally infiltrated or coerced or convinced or persuaded outside of your principles, and whatever
yeah,
those principles are.
yes, because you have to have a foundation. You
Yeah.
got to have a foundation to stand on. Now, are you open to hearing different ideas from people on things? Sure. But if you don't have a foundation to stand on and are able to, you know, defend that foundation in some ways, you know, I mean, it's a Bible idea. You know, if you don't have a strong if you build your house on sand, it's going to wash away. If you build it on, you know, limestone, then it's probably going to be around for a little while. Um, and and I've tried to build that. And you know, somebody asked, I think it was an X question a while ago, you know, if you wrote a autobiography, what would you title it? And unfuckwithable. That was I think that would, or embrace the suck. That's another idea I've come very fond of. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier about the dance and about relaxing and embracing the suck, because the suck is going to come, because life is full of suck, you know. But that's the beauty of it too, because the overcoming of the suck, the getting through, over, around, through, on however you got to do it, ugly, pretty, getting through it is and learning from it, you don't make a mistake. There's no mistake. You can wipe mistake out of your vocabulary if you learn from the events in your life, because it's not a mistake if you learn from it. That's kind of the embrace the suck, you know. If embrace the struggles, if you can learn through the struggles turn worth it. As a recovering alcoholic, I remember when I got to the point, because as an addict, I mean, people in general, we harbor these things in our resentments. We were talking about earlier, resentment. We harbor all these things that have happened to us in life, and the ways we've disappointed ourselves, and we beat ourselves up about these things all the time. And when I got sober and I got to a point where I was like, okay, you know, I've done some work. I'm on a path. I see the path laid out in front of me, and I'm walking it fairly. You know, I'm not perfectly straight, but I'm walking it. What I discovered is all those old resentments and all that weight that I was carrying on my shoulders didn't go away, but got very light. Got very, very light, because I was proud of where I was. I was not comfortable, but proud of the direction I was currently facing, right? So that's my barometer in life. When I feel that weight start to get heavy on my shoulders again, I know I'm doing something wrong. I know that I'm veering off the path when those old resentments come back. That's my arrow, man. You know, that's what keeps me on the path, because I hate those old feelings. I hate having to feel and remember the way I was, but it's amazing that being on a good path and knowing that all that stuff you did got you to where you are. So when you're happy with where you are, that stuff is light.
Man, I think that's a great way to close the show. Um, that's definitely a lesson in learning, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, more learning. It's all.
Sorry, I
It's
meant to
all.
say a lesson in knowledge in knowing. I said lesson in learning. I meant to say a lesson in knowing.
And that is what it's. I mean, to take it back to the very beginning, that's what it's all about. Know
Yeah,
yourself, right?
man, absolutely. Know yourself first, and then engage the world, and have
That's a
discernment.
Peterson idea for me right there, Jordan Peterson. I love that dude. I don't care what he's been going through lately. I know that he gets shit thrown on him lately, but man, back in those 16 through 19, 20 years, that dude was saving lives day after day. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, he was, man. I do wish him well. I have no bad feelings towards him. You know, I don't wish evil on anyone that's not inherently evil. And I don't wish evil on anyone, but I don't wish good on evil people. But anyway, that's a whole other subject that maybe we could do another episode on. But Ghost, man, I appreciate your time, man. Everybody, please do make sure you go and follow Goats at Fear No Goats. Do make sure you subscribe, comment, like, share this video. Make sure to show Goats love. Follow me as well on X at MNBFY Pod. I do have this on Rumble. I'm going to have the episodes on Rumble now. Goats, if I'll get with you after the show, but for those that want to check this out on Rumble, go to at Might Not Be For You Pod on your search, and it should pop up. I'm having a lot of problems with Rumble. I don't know why it's being so weird, but Goats, man, again, thanks for the time. Hope to do this again with you soon, dude. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation, bud.
All right, man. Well, everyone, thank you. Hope you enjoy it, and talk to you later.
Peace out.